Hey, welcome back to the Biohacks podcast. Today we are joined by Olympian and England Rugby 7's player Phil Burgess, a good friend of mine from back in the day. And we're going to be basically jumping on and talking about what does it take to make it to the Olympics and to the top levels in rugby. So Phil, really appreciate you coming on, mate.
Thank you very much for having me. It's lovely to catch up, lovely to be involved.
Guys, just before we get into it, make sure if you've got any questions for Phil, then leave them in the comments box below. We'll do our best to get them answered. And if you like today's content, then make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, as it really helps us with the YouTube algorithm. Phil, how did you get into rugby, mate? Like, what's the background?
So I started playing rugby when I was about 4 years old. So I was really young getting into rugby. And the main reason I got involved was purely through my brother and my sister. So I've got an older brother and an older sister. And they were playing rugby at my local rugby club, which was Camberley. And I think my brother must have been 7 or something like that at the time. He was down there playing, and like any sibling, I was just like, I just want to do it. What are they doing? What are they doing? So I think I went down and I ended up playing in like the not playing rugby, but like I was on the rugby field throwing a ball around, doing something like that. And yeah, so from a young age, it was completely sort of family orientated. My dad used to play, and then the age old, he blew out his knee when he was however old and he couldn't play anymore.
Been there, done
and then exactly, we all know that. And then so just sort of following my brother and my sister down to the field and playing. And yeah, like I played every sport under the sun when I was younger, but rugby just sort of dominated a little bit. And then I think because I became a little bit more, I wouldn't say successful at it, but because you have to sort of almost choose a bit in terms of where you spend your time. When rugby were like, oh, you could be good at this, you spend more time doing it. And so that was for me how I just got involved and just kept at it. So it was mainly my family that drew me in.
Did you ever run track?
Sorry?
Did you ever run?
No. So I went down to like an athletics club, so the Aldershot Athletics Club, which is near me. But I wouldn't say I really ever had any sort of athletic ability almost. Like I never really, I wasn't really the quickest. Like I was quick, but I wasn't the quickest. Endurance wise, I was never, I wasn't skinny, but I wasn't fat. So I wasn't like able to run like a 400 and 800, long jump, all that.
What were the other sports then? What were the other ones you were playing?
So I used to do everything, literally just like, I did basketball, like cricket, football, orienteering, all the, like I did loads of different things. Well, I even played like hockey and like roller hockey and all that sort of stuff, which I guess really helped me in terms of my ability to sort of problem solve in games, because I was playing lots of different games that had all different rules and everything like that. And so from a young age, I was exposed to how do you beat the game as opposed to just playing like one sport all the time. And I think I would have loved to have done more, like looking back on my career, I would have loved to have done more athletics or potentially even like sort of a gymnastics or something, just to understand my body a bit more in terms of my body movements.
Yeah. It's a really interesting point, because obviously I think a lot of people can end up getting pigeonholed from a young age, can't they? And you kind of, exactly like you're saying, there are things that you learn which are greater than just the physical part of the sport. It's the cognitive, and I guess that's one of the things you're known for with your rugby. I guess it's about being smart and making good decisions. It's quite interesting your point you made about decision making from.
Yeah, and I think there's it's weighing that up as well, because there's at the moment there's like a few different routes for like young athletes. And, I say athletes in terms of guys playing sport, but you've got some guys that are incredibly athletic on the track and stuff like that maybe don't have the exposure to sort of invasion games or anything like that. And then they're almost ported across when they're sort of 16, 17, because they've got the athletic ability, and then they're almost tried to be taught the skill and how to play the game, rather than some guys that have been dead involved in the game for ages, and you have to learn the sort of athletic skills, with your running drills and everything like that. And some guys can excel at that and some can't. And so there's sort of different routes into different sports, ins and outs, because like some guys that come in because they're athletic, but then they can't do a certain skill, so they might go into another avenue of sport as well, if that makes sense.
That's interesting. That's an interesting point. So, and so then I guess, so you kind of, when did you start to focus in on rugby? What age was that?
So I think it was probably from like 13 or 14. So I think when I was sort of started at secondary school, because I still played all the different sports, but then it just meant like at half terms and things like that, I was being invited to sort of like training camps at at Harlequins. And that meant that I would be going away for like 3 days out of the half term. And so in terms of being able to still do all my homework and then like train and everything like that, I couldn't do rugby camp and football camp and something else. No, it was almost like, right, you do that, and then when you come back, you can still play your club rugby and whatever. So I was still doing a lot of like rugby, but it almost started to dominate my life from that sort of age, really. It was always, whenever there would be half terms or holidays or anything like that, there would always be camps or training or something like that. And so it was almost, the decision at that point was, well, do you want to do the rugby or do you want to do something else? And because I'd done so much rugby, it just seemed to sort of snowball into, well, yeah, I'm doing rugby because that's what I'm good at. And then, so it wasn't really I wouldn't say a choice. It was more just what happened.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. And then when did it really start getting serious? Like, what was the...
I think probably from like 16 onwards. So like at 16, I moved teams from Camberley. So we started playing like county rugby and all that sort of stuff as you start to get sort of spotted almost. And at that point there was like an England age group team, but I was nowhere sort of near that. I played like county rugby for my club rather than my school, because at the time it was all split into clubs and schools, and then it almost like combined like later on. I mean, I wasn't really in it, so I didn't really know. But so for me, I started playing club rugby there, but then the club that I was at, I was always sort of one of the best players. And so I was sort of the best player in like a worse team almost. So I needed to step away from that team to push myself to get better. And so we moved like to sort of a London Irish team for a year. So on the back of some of the coaches saying, you need to push yourself, you need to go and do this. And so I went there to play. And then the following year after that, I actually went to play for London Welsh Colts, I think it was, because they played in a men's league in Wales, which was great for a number of reasons, because it meant that I got to play men's rugby, but also it meant that I get to go to Wales and got beaten up every other weekend. And so I think that's when it sort of started getting a bit more serious, because at that age as well, like you had guys that wanted to do the sport and carry on, and then you also had your other friends that were a bit like, nah, like I'm all right, like I'll go out on a Saturday night, we'll do something on a Saturday night and then play on a Sunday, rather than for me it was, I won't go out on a Saturday night because I wanted to play on a Sunday. And so it was probably from there.
Yeah. No, so that's there's a kind of split, I guess, in there that comes, people make their choices, and I guess it's dependent. I guess some of it's down to like where you kind of in your hierarchy, where are you? Like, do you have the potential? I guess what was driving you is that you kind of knew that you had what to do. And I think this is one of the common things, I guess, that a lot of young rugby players see, is that there's this, I don't know if there's this kind of pressure at that age to be really good. And I guess if you haven't made it by England 16s, then should you carry on type of thing? And I guess obviously you did. Like there is something said about kind of the late developers, that people aren't quite there at that age. Is like
oh man, I think sport in general is, there's so many athletes, players that are lost because they're not developed yet. And I don't know where those avenues are specifically. But within rugby, there is one at university, obviously being at Loughborough and stuff like that. There's guys that develop physically and mentally from 18 to 21. And, the growth of living away from home, looking after yourself, going out, enjoying yourself, but then realizing, okay, I've got to look after myself. And then if you want to, taking your sport seriously and all that sort of stuff, it gives you the opportunity to develop and to get better. And I think there's lots of sports that don't harness the late developers very well. I mean, within the 7's environment, we might be skipping forward a bit here, but within the 7's environment specifically, the game relies on you being, firstly, a little bit of a psycho in terms of some of your fitness and how you have to push yourself, but you also have to have an element of, a cognitive capacity to play the game. No, you can't just be out there and be stupid, if that makes sense. You can't always rely on your gut instinct, because you have to compute things. And I think the avenue of a lot of our guys going to university, and I'm not saying that we all came out with first or anything like that. It's not that. It's more about just the development,
100%,
problem solve and stuff like that, which I think really helps within the 7's environment, definitely, because those guys are out there solving problems because they've lived their life and they've done it. They haven't been, I wouldn't say, sort of cornered, but they're not within the sporting environment. They've done other things, so they're a little bit more rounded. So that when it comes to 7's, traveling the world, dealing with all these issues, we have had more guys at university playing for our 7's team than we have in any other sport that I played, any other team that I've played in.
Interesting. That's a really interesting insight, actually. Obviously about the interplay between psychology, development. It's not only physical development, but it's obviously like mental development, I guess, as well. And it's that's a really interesting point. And so how did you get involved with Quins? And what was because obviously from going and playing Welsh men's league and battered every weekend.
Yeah.
What was the next kind of?
So like Quins came. So I was in like the EPDG from which is like a player group where they almost pretty much like hoovered up a lot of the young talent in certain areas, and they almost like put you in these pods and were like, right, let's just go head to head almost and see who's the best. And you were just training and training and training. And I sort of just stayed in this camp where I was. And I remember it got to about, I think it was I was 18, so last year at school. And there was only 3 18-year-olds in there. So there was me, Adam Tombstone, and a chap called Seb Jewell. And we were the only 3 in there. And so everyone else had been whittled away. Yeah. And it was almost like, well, this is like, I'm training with 17-year-olds now. So I'm not really pushing myself in the same way. Like I'm now like the top of this group that I could be in. And then from there, the 3 guys left, we were offered a contract to go fully professional at Harlequins the next year, which was awesome. And so that process for me worked because I was going to these camps, I was training. You'd sometimes have the academy coaches there, you'd have certain players that talk to them about experiences. We had diet advice and nutrition and all that sort of stuff. At that age, I did take a lot of it in, but I don't think I really took it in like I would now, if that makes sense. I think there potentially could have been better things that I could have spent my time doing then. Because looking back, well, I mean, just understanding my body more. I remember speaking with a psychologist. We had psychology sessions and stuff like that. But I can remember him talking about things, but I don't really remember ever learning anything, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like the concepts and everything like that now I understand because of having a psychologist for, the last 7-8 years and helping me with my performance. I understand it and I can understand why, because I have that life experience as well, rather than when we were like 15, 16, stuff that they were probably saying, I was thinking, yeah, okay, can't wait to get home and watch TV or something like, I honestly believe if I had an opportunity to do we did loads of like wrestling and stuff like this with Tom Farrow, so Farrow, and what I really enjoyed about that in the last few years was how strong and powerful I am, yet how difficult it was to transfer any of that strength and power into something like wrestling, because it's not about it is obviously strength and power, but it's not that. It's about maneuvering, maneuvering, feel and everything like that, which when you first start, you do like a 2-minute or whatever minute blast and you're like, bloody hell, my forearms are on fire, like I'm really blowing, rather than 6 months down the line, you're almost like, actually, you get a feel for it. Sure. And I kind of feel things like that when I was younger maybe would have helped me no end, because I think the physical development can be there because, physically, I don't think you forget that sort of stuff. Yeah, and the mental stuff, I think I probably did forget a lot of it. And even like,
I guess some of it's textbook, isn't it? Like they say, oh yeah, right, we got these EPDG guys, we want to give them the best experience. I guess this is maybe something to do with the time that it was as well. I guess early 2000s, I guess. And And I guess, yeah, some of it's like, oh, we need to put a psychologist in. So then they just do like, it's like going to school again type of thing where like you're not really engaged. And I guess there's not much thought put behind it. Whereas I guess now we're in a whole new space, even with sport science, sport psychology, sport physiology, sport nutrition. I guess we're in a whole new way of not only education, but I don't know how far the industry's come on. But I guess it's like how they actually execute and how they deliver those services now, I guess, as well, which is obviously what you're really...
And like looking back now, and even this conversation got me thinking, like, what would have been really valuable to a 14, 15, 16-year-old maybe is players coming in to talk to those guys about their experience and about not just about the glory days of winning this and smashing that and whatever, but about this is hard and this is difficult and I can talk to you about it and I can tell you how I feel, so that those guys can realize that everyone is just a normal person and you don't have to be afraid to talk about things, which means that hopefully if you were to get into a team or whatever, you could then be a positive influence in terms of like mental capacity as well. Like you can be like, yeah, I'm worried about this, or, you know, let's talk about this because I'm concerned or whatever, or I'm really, really happy. Let's share in this moment, as opposed to everyone being like, yeah, I'm really manly and like I could deal with all this and whatever. I think showing kids at that young age that it's all right to not be all right, and these are the guys that you aspire to be. 100%. You have someone doing that, I think now is probably more of an option, but 100%. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, 100%. I even just like what you said there, like you even look where you've made it to, and you got overlooked at England 16, and the amount of kids that are out there, there's only been a small amount that have actually do get selected. And I think it's like exactly like you're saying, that because you at that age you don't have the foresight and you can't see the bigger picture, yet they can only learn through mentors, through experience, I guess. But obviously mentors accelerate that process, and it's kind of like giving yourself a bit of a break and recognizing that even the guys at the top of the game now that you see have had many different routes to the top of the mountain type of thing. So I think it's a really, really
absolutely valid point. Yeah. And almost if you can get guys that are playing still to be doing that, because I think even now you've got guys that have retired from the game and they're saying things like, you know, I've got not mental issues, but, you know, I've got mental problems, I've got this, and I had this issue while I was playing, and I had this while I was playing, and I had this while I was playing. If you can get people to be open and honest while they're playing, I think that would just strengthen the bottom side of that game no end, because people will be like, okay, well, you know, we don't have to shy away from all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Sorry, that's very deep, but that's
no, it's really 100%, mate. It's a really great point, and I think it's this is what these conversations are about. It's about kind of mulling out ideas and kind of helping people progress and moving forwards, and helping yourself progress as well. Because the best way to know that you've learned something is to obviously teach it to others, and it's like kind of what we're all here to do. So you kind of Harlequins did that phase. You obviously contract and you got let go. Like, how did you get to England 7's? What was the kind of, just give us the bridge version?
Yeah, so I went Loughborough. I was there for 3 years, and when I sort of arrived, I was kind of on the brink of, did I want to do professional rugby or did I just want to sort of transition away from it? And the environment there was great. Like, you know, apart from yourself being there, you know, loads of great people, and like the whole environment was really, really cool. And it meant that I played loads of rugby, which was great. You know, you play Wednesday, Saturdays, all that sort of stuff. Like, you have your injuries and whatever, but you enjoy yourself and you just throw yourself into it. And, you know, I did my 3 years, which was good. I ended up playing England Students, which at the time was sort of like the top level that I could have got to. Enjoyed the rugby. And then after that, I had an offer to go to the Cornish Pirates, which is down in Penzance. I had an opportunity to do the 7's as well, but I wanted to stay in the 15's because I never really played 7's, and I thought I want to give 15's a good go and see if I can get back into the game almost. So I went down to Pirates. So they're playing the championship. I played there for 3 years. And I've been very fortunate, the teams that I've played in. So even at Loughborough, you know, we had a really good culture because it's driven by the lads and all that sort of stuff. It was really good. And then at Pirates, we had a sort of a Kiwi coach that was all about family, and he completely understood. He was really good with people, which meant that as a side, we understood that because we were at the arse end of nowhere, we had to be tight together, you know, and that was really interesting for me going down there, expecting every club to be like that, but they probably weren't like that at all. So I was very fortunate to go into that sort of setup. And I did 3 years there. Loved it. You know, we were very successful. I was down there, played with some awesome players, some guys that were incredibly talented. And there again, like I was like, oh, all the teams are like this, but they weren't. You know, we were very fortunate to have some awesome players. And then after my 3rd year down there, I'd almost reached a bit of a glass ceiling in terms of where I could get to. A mixture of things. One, I think the main thing that was holding me back was probably my awareness of my own ability in terms of what I was good at and what I was bad at. And then secondly was probably my physical stature in terms of playing 15. So I was never small on the field, but whenever I spoke to people off the field or went to, you know, trial and do all this, everyone would be like, oh, you're not as big as I thought you'd be. And
this
for me, that always,
like the selectors.
Yeah, and like coaches and stuff like that. So even after like A-League games and stuff like that, like, you know, I felt I'd played pretty well. And, you know, I'd watch the footage and I'd be like, yeah, no, I've done all right, I've tackled here and I've done this. And then after it'd be like, oh yeah, you know, but you're only sort of 90, 95 kilos and, you know, you're only, you know 6 foot and all this sort of stuff. And so for me, I was like, well, I'm not really going to be able to get that much taller, and you know, like I'm not going to be able to put on another 15 kilos or that. So it's almost like, what else? I was doing what you wanted on the field, but what I can't really change your thoughts. And this was at a time where, you know, if I'd have come now, if I was playing now, I think I'd have been in a much better position to
different games,
super strengths. Yeah, super strengths, do that, and then you can be fitted into a side. But at the time, it was very much just like crash and bash, and we need 120 kilo man to run into another 120 kilo man, and I get that, and even like looking back, the issues with my game, I was really good going forward, like really good attacking, and that was what I was good at. And defensively, I was never bad, but it was never something that was my super strength. You know, it was never someone would look at me and be like, bloody hell, he's really good over the ball, or he's really good at tackling. I was never bad at it, but it was never really, really good.
I guess they're looking for, like, I guess that's what a lot of the scouts are looking for. They're looking for someone they want that, even if you're lacking in other areas, they want, and that's maybe even like a lack of, I guess maybe that even shows the time, doesn't it? They're looking for the superstar when actually they should have been building strong, solid teams and building around the team rather than the individual.
Absolutely. And that's where, like, for me, I could have got much better in my defence. And that was what helped when I moved to 7's. So after my 3rd year, I couldn't really progress in terms of the Premiership. Like, I've been offered a couple of deals and stuff like that, but it was nowhere really that they were like, we want you. It was more a case of,
come train.
Yeah, you know, come and see how it goes. And I was almost like, right, okay, well, I could have done that. And then at the time I was offered a contract to go and play 7's. So Ben Ryan, who'd actually been chasing me for a couple of years, invited me to come and play 7's. And then with the Olympics on the horizon, it was a case of, I think you're suited to the game. Let's see how you go and let's aim for the Olympics. Obviously, I didn't know if I'd take to the game or if I wouldn't or anything like that. So I came across to 7's. And then within the first 3 months of being there, so Ben was sort of asked to leave as coach and all this sort of stuff. So the guy that had been chasing me for 3 years to come and play was released. And, you know, so that was a bit of a nervous time for me because... Sorry?
You moved to Fiji and got yourself a tan.
Yeah, he did. Well, lots of sun cream.
I was going to say you should have moved to Fiji.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's it. I don't know. I don't speak too much Fijian, bula bula. And so, yeah, and that's when I came across. But as it was a blessing in disguise because I came across to the 7's. And as Ben was obviously chasing me and pulling me in, Simon Amor, so the head coach, just started. And so for someone that hadn't really ever played the game of 7's, I was in a position where Simon was going to teach us how he wanted us all to play the game. So I was in a perfect position to learn from the ground up. So he went right back to basics and I was there from there, you know. So instead of having these ideals of this is how we play 7's, this is what we should do, I was coming in going, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm willing to learn. Let's do it. I was at the perfect time for it because Simon was starting here and, you know, we just sort of grew together through the program. So I was very lucky. And that's where we ended up playing for 7's 7 years down the line.
Yeah. Mate, what journey, eh? What journey.
Yeah. Very lucky. very lucky, I would say. Just fortunate timings on certain things, and yeah, very lucky.
Mate, so what does it take, really? What does a day in the life for... So you made it to sevens. What does a day in the life of an England sevens player really look like?
So for a sevens player, it's probably more different to a normal rugby player, in terms of a normal rugby player would obviously have games pretty much every other weekend or every weekend. And so you'd be sort of training maybe hard at the start of the week. You'd probably taper from maybe like a Wednesday or Thursday, or depending on injuries and all that sort of stuff, you'd be prepping for the game at the weekend. But for a sevens player, because we have tournaments sort of spread out 4 or 5 weeks apart sometimes, a couple of months from the start of the season maybe, I'd probably say we train more like athletes than we do specifically rugby players, just in terms of like a loading thing. So we're lucky that we have some really good sort of like sports scientists that work with us, and S&Cs and stuff, that take into account the loads and also where we want to get to, how we want to get there and stuff like that. So we won't always train the same week in, week out, so as we're coming up to a tournament, we might be trying to peak. Obviously, like an athlete, you're trying to peak for a tournament, so you're in best physical condition. So if you imagine like sort of a 6-week block, maybe if we use that as an example, the first sort of week or so, you're probably getting into it, you're getting yourself loading, you're getting ready to go, and that would probably be incorporating rugby sessions, speed sessions, skill sessions, psychology, rugby, all these different things spread out throughout a week. And you'd probably have on-field rugby would probably be about 8 hours. So you probably have about 5.5, 6 sessions maybe.
Wow.
You'd be in the gym 4 times. You'd be doing speed and skills probably another couple of times. So in terms of hours worked, you might only be working maybe like 20 hours of the week in terms of physically. But other than that, you would have a lot of analysis of opposition, analysis of ourselves, rehabilitation, prehabilitation, psychology. Yeah, it is. But the good thing that we had at Sevens was a mentality that we talked about, sliding scale, which we would use for tournaments. So, and what we meant by that was like a sliding scale of sort of 0 to 10, 10 being like you're really on, and 0 being you're completely off. And really, you never got to 0 and you never got to 10, but it was always between sort of 1 and 9. So, about to go out on the field, you might be a 9, but then when you'd come off and you need to relax and you need to mentally take yourself down and chill, you go down to a 1 and you just enjoy a bit of company and you just chat, or you just read a book or something. But they were really good at that in the Sevens, just understanding that when we're on, we have to be on, and when we're off, you have to relax. And that's, I guess, reflection of what the sport is like and the tournaments, because if you were on for 2 days straight, you'd be physically and mentally exhausted. And so the training that we...
No, sorry, go on, finish what you're going to say.
No, so I think the training is exactly like that, like it's up and it's down, just to try and replicate that, because it's very difficult to replicate a tournament if you were training like a normal rugby player. If that
I was going to say, Catch, even the tournaments are like that, aren't they? It's like 7 minutes of intensity and off, but then you've obviously got to do that multiple times throughout the day, and I guess that's a whole skill, and then you've got to do that on the second day as well. So I guess it's like a skill. So it's really, rather than just a slow drawn out 80 minutes and then a week off, well, not week off, but like it's like this really
another build
period, but then a really, like, you can't, I guess there's nothing prepares you for the competition than the actual competition itself, I guess. Like,
and that's why I think Sevens is unique in terms of the sport, because we get the the athlete side of it, where you're tapering and you're building for this sort of one tournament, but then when you get into the tournament, it's this sort of physical battle in terms of sometimes 3 days, sometimes 2 day tournaments where you're playing and you've got 3 hours between a game or 6 hours between a game. And then you might be playing at night, and then you have a bad night's sleep, and then you're up early the next day doing a blowout and all this sort of stuff. So you're not training for a 200 meters every 3 days or whatever it is. You're literally going there, and it's a weird experience. But the way that we sort of train and the way that we try and make, I don't really know how to put it, like we try and soften ourselves to understand that it's going to be hard, but also it is just rugby, if that makes sense. It is just fun in that sense. So it is a job and it is hard,
Yeah.
but in the same way, you really can enjoy it.
Wow. It is actually,
I'm really lucky.
Like, you can kind of say that it's proper adversity. I guess you're going to another country in front of other people's fans. You've got to get there. You've got the jet lag. You've had to peak. Like, you're peaking for this competition. Then you've got the flights to get there. It's all of it together, isn't it? It's like this whole, it's like going to war type of thing. And you've had done all this preparation to get yourself in the best physical shape. But then when you get on the ground, it's like chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, you've got to deal with all sorts of stuff when you get there as well. Like in terms of like sickness and illness sometimes, and just keep on your toes. It's like with everything, isn't it? But the last thing you want to do is travel 24 hours, pick up illness on the way, and then you're dealing with that. And yeah, it's awesome though, because it just adds to the fun of it, really.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess so. Probably look to wrap up in a minute, but
no worries.
We kind of got a bit through your story. It'd be good to maybe go in. I was kind of saying to Tom, actually, I might try and get you and Tom on together, because I want to chat about conditioning. I know that you guys do a lot of GPS, and I know that obviously fitness is now looked at. Fitness and speed is obviously a continuum. And I really want to delve into some of the science behind that, from maybe the player's perspective, actually having to go through those type of hell sessions. So I can imagine they are savage. I've not done any. I would always turn up to 7's in like terrible shape. I'd be good for one.
You'd just be boshing people anyway. That's what I remember.
It'd be really great to hear, obviously, from Tom's side and yours together. It'd be really nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
It'd be a really good one to do. So, but yeah, so maybe just as a bit of like just 3 kind of pointers or tips, like from Phil Burgess to young rugby players, or even rugby players who are playing now, that you think would be really helpful for people to become the best, whatever that best version of themselves is, I guess.
I think 3 tips. Right. What I'd say is, firstly, is just basics, like run, catch, pass, tackle, all that sort of. Don't underestimate the basic stuff. If it's easy and it's boring, become a master at it, because lots of people overlook that. Like if you can pass a ball really, really well, that's amazing. But lots of people can't do it. And I think that's really important. So really hammer your basics. I'd say the other thing combined with those basics is probably effort. So you've got the basics of skills, but effort in terms of what you're doing, and whether that's on the field or off the field. Yeah. And even effort in terms of like everything you do. I think it can offload, because I think if you're someone like myself, I pride myself on giving effort and giving everything. It doesn't mean that you have to be on all the time.
100%.
I think makes sense.
I think people confuse that, and I think I've been caught up in that in the past. You think effort is doing more, but actually effort can be learning more, or it can be getting mentors to kind of help guide you in the right direction. It's like, it's more than just the physical. I guess it's like,
absolutely.
I think that's what you're trying to say.
Yeah, and like because someone was asking me about effort, because I've spoken to my boys about effort. I want to see effort, and on the field it's easy. You run, you work hard, and everything like that. But off the field is just important. It might be not doing that extra run because you injure yourself or something like that, and it's just trying to be a bit smarter with it. So the two main ones, probably, well, say 2 key ones: basics and effort on the field and off the field. And the third is probably just like, try your best to do something that you enjoy. If you enjoy rugby, give it everything. But if you don't enjoy it, it's a case of find something that you enjoy. And rugby might be a byproduct of that, or sport might be a byproduct, but you need to be happy. And if you don't get enjoyment from it, that you're the important person. And we sort of spoke before this call just about why you're doing things. And it's almost like, if you don't know why you're doing it and you don't enjoy it, you may need to try and explore why you're doing it and where you can get your enjoyment. Because like, you can do the basics and you can work really hard, but if you're not enjoying it, like what's the point? You need to put that effort and into something else. So I'd probably say that: basics, effort, and just enjoyment.
People commit to things they enjoy, don't they? And if you commit to something, you're going to be much better over time than you are in short bursts. So I guess those are really great pointers, mate. I think
thank you.
Back those up as well. So if people want to connect with you, like, it's obviously like social media, best place to kind of obviously follow you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, come through yourself as well. Like, leave comments on here. But yeah, come on socials and stuff like that. I'm on on the normal channels. So you come find me.
No, Phil, I really appreciate your time, buddy. It's been great.
Thank you.
We'll get you back on again at some point, and we'll delve into some more of the science. So I really appreciate your time, mate.
No problem. Anytime.
Take care, bud.